Welcome to a bonus edition of Behind the Mic with AudioFile magazine. I'm Joe Reed.
I've never used either her first name or her last. To me, for more than 60 years, she's been Lila. If I were to call her Lena or Rafaela, suddenly, like that, she would think our friendship was over. It's been at least 3 decades since she told me that she wanted to disappear without a trace, and I'm the only one who knows what she means.
You just heard Hilary Huber narrating Elena Ferrante's novel, My Brilliant Friend. Hilary's voice is well known to audiobook lovers everywhere. It's compelling, nuanced, and instantly engaging. With over 700 audiobooks to her name, she's brought life to everything, from chilling thrillers to intricate literary fiction, including Ferrante's Neapolitan Quartet and Lisa Gardner's Frankie Elkin series. Well, now AudioFile magazine has named Hilary Huber one of its 2025 Golden Voices. It's an honor reserved for narrators who consistently demonstrate their artistry in giving voice to a wide range of books. And Hilary Huber has certainly done that, bringing care and craft to every performance. I spoke with Hilary shortly after she was named a Golden Voice to talk about how she found her way to audiobook narration, the craft behind her performances, and what this recognition means to her. Let's listen. Well, Hilary, let me begin by congratulating you about being named a Golden Voice by AudioFile magazine.
Thank you. It's such an honor.
I want to know when acting began for you.
Gosh, it seems funny to say it, but grade school. I was performing in grade school plays, and I never really stopped. But the funny thing is, I never really had aspirations to be an actor. I just liked doing it. So I acted all through school, high school, college. I did summer stock theater. I majored in English. And then when I graduated, I didn't pursue any kind of acting career. I went into actually publishing. Gift book publishing was my first job. So yeah, I just liked doing it. I took a lot of acting classes.
But it didn't connect that this could be a career for you.
No, I don't think so. I wanted to major in graphic design. Isn't that random? And my mother said, no, you can't do that. That's too limiting. You will major in English because if you can read well and write well, then you can do anything. And I was like, all right. Now I'm really grateful for that because I think being an English major has certainly informed the kind of work I'm doing now.
Now, you came to audiobooks through voiceover work.
I did. So I had all these jobs after graduation. Like I said, I worked for a publisher for a bit. I had a actually very successful decorative painting company in the heyday of, marbleizing and all those sort of faux treatments. And I did that for many years out here in California. And I even marbleized columns that are at Caesar's Palace in Vegas. I think they're still there, actually, which is crazy. And when I got pregnant, I thought, I can't do this anymore because I was around all this toxic paint. And I have always had a low, throaty voice. I sounded like this when I was 18 years old. And so I've heard about my voice my whole life. And my husband was in advertising. So I was around ad people who would say, you should be doing voiceovers. So I took some classes and super short story, I started doing commercial voiceovers. And that was my first work behind a microphone.
How did you then move to audiobooks? And how long had you been doing voiceovers when you made the switch?
So I'd been doing it for 6 or 7 years. I think it was 10 years. And every day we would go into our agency, our talent agency, and you'd sit there and you'd be handed pieces of copy to audition. And there would, be 15 of us sitting in there, and there's 4 different booths that you'd get put in and come out and go in and go out. And I remember sitting there and seeing these older women walk into the lobby with a look of sort of abject terror on their faces. And they would be handed one piece of copy. And I would be holding 12 pieces of copy. And what was happening is that even though we want to think voiceover is blind, they were aging out of the demographic. So they were no longer being given copy for 25 to 40-year-olds. And they were literally watching their careers evaporate. They had had very vibrant, well-paying, sustainable careers, and the opportunities were just disappearing. And it really made an impact on me. There were two of them in particular, two of these women. And I looked at them and thought, that's going to be me at some point if I don't find some other colors to put on my palette. And I thought about what else could I do with my acting background and my voice. Because I really had no desire to ever be on camera. I hate having my picture taken professionally. And audiobooks just seemed like, number one, I could do it forever. I wouldn't age out of doing audiobooks. As long as I could read and speak and sit in a chair, I can narrate an audiobook. But also on a more deeper level, after 10 years of selling products, I just didn't feel a lot of fulfillment in what I was doing. It was fun and it paid well and I had a great time and I loved doing it, but I just didn't get a sense that I was leaving something pretty behind on the planet. And audiobooks really fit both of those needs that I had.
Do you remember your first
Oh,
audiobook?
you bet I do. I contacted Blackstone Audio. I pitched myself to them. I sent them a copy of The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath with me reading a section of it because I love that book and I couldn't find it anywhere on audio. And they said, wow, yeah, you'd be great to read this book. And then they couldn't get the rights. The rights weren't available. So they came back and said, well, we can't do that one, but would you be willing to narrate A Very Easy Death by Simone de Beauvoir? So that was my first book.
What was it about audiobooks and narrating that felt right for you?
It just sort of encapsulates all that I've learned through being an English major and an avid reader and all of my years of being a performer. It's just a perfect marriage of those experiences and also what I learned about being behind a microphone and how to play with a microphone and how to be comfortable listening to the sound of my own voice, which so many people have trouble with. You know, I got used to that a long time ago doing voiceover. When you look back on all the little paths you've taken over the years and see that so many of them seemed like they weren't going anywhere, but they just kind of went off on their little tangents and circled back into this great big world of audiobooks, I feel very fortunate.
Were you surprised by how rigorous audiobook narration is? I mean, that is a long day of speaking nonstop.
I know. You know, I think that in the beginning, when you've got one book that you're doing, I probably recorded for an hour a day, right? So, you know, I don't remember feeling that it was as rigorous as I feel like it is now when I'm doing it full time. I feel like that also, it was a sort of slow burn. I worked my way toward that stamina because it really does take stamina, doesn't it? So many of my commercial friends have contacted me as soon as they realized I was doing this. Oh, I want to do audiobooks. That sounds great. You know, they're looking at the same picture that I was looking at. And I give them some tips and they go give it a shot. And so many of them have come back and said, oh, no way. I cannot do that. It's not for everybody.
How do you prepare for narrating fiction, for example? Do you have processes that help you connect emotionally with a book?
I don't have any sort of step-by-step thing that I do, but obviously I read the book and
No, not so obvious, but
I mean,
hooray that you do.
yeah, it kills me to think that. I love it because it's usually the first question that people ask, how many times do you read the book? Or do you have to read the book? And it's so important to me. I have tried, I think twice when I was really busy to hire a prepper, which I know a lot of people do very successfully. And they do a great job. You know, they take it apart chapter by chapter. They tell you the arc of the story. They tell you who all the characters are. And so, it's kind of like reading the Cliff's Note of your book. But it just doesn't work for me. There's just a process that happens when I'm reading. I feel like this sort of filtration of water through sediment in the soil. I absorb different nutrients along the way. So that's a very important process for me. The voices develop in my head. It's a very organic process, but it definitely starts with reading the book.
Well, I want to talk specifically about the way you work with fiction through the prism of Elena Ferrante's books, the Neapolitan Quartet, which you've read. You've read all of her books, but these in particular. Hilary, if you have done nothing else but these books, you should be named a Golden
Oh,
Voice.
thank
These
you.
are brilliant,
Ugh,
brilliant books.
they're treasures.
They are, and I read them before I listened to them. So if you don't think I had opinions about things, you would
Oh,
be
no.
very, very wrong. But I was just captivated by the way you shared them with me.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I was captivated too. They were so beautiful.
For listeners who might not know, these are 4 books. They're known as the Neapolitan Quartet that follow the lives of 2 very intelligent girls spanning from the 1950s to 2010, Elena and Lila. And we really move with them from childhood to adulthood and old age. So, how did you arrive at these voices?
Wow. Let me just say that those books had not been published in the United States until I think the 4th one. I could be wrong about that. So we kind of rushed to get the previous ones done. But my point is, they meant nothing to me because they hadn't been published here. So they did not have the fame that they have now. So I got this book and I thought, wow, this is really beautiful. But I didn't understand at that time what a big deal those books would be. And I'm grateful for that because I probably would have been a nervous wreck. And I wasn't. So I just approached it like I approach everything else. And in that case, I like to say when you are graced with the talent of a beautiful writer, the heavy lifting has been done for me.
There was everything in those pages, but especially hatred for the Solara brothers. The fierce determination with which she had rejected the love of the older, Marcello, and the moment when she had decided, instead, to marry the gentle Stefano Caracci, the grocer, who out of love had wanted to buy the first pair of shoes she had made, vowing that he would keep them forever. Ah, the wonderful moment when, at 15, she had felt herself a rich and elegant lady.
I really just had to become a vessel for her extraordinary storytelling. I do remember I tried not to be too extreme in any accents. I just wanted to be a little bit subtle, but I wanted to be very thorough in my pronunciations. I spent some college time in Florence, so I have some Italian in my back pocket. So that wasn't too hard for me. But by the time I got to the 4th one, I had an understanding of what a big deal these books were going to be. I mean, I think they're some of the most widely published books out there, and she's such a phenom. Yeah, I hold them very dear because they really are special.
It's a story of this extraordinary friendship. And while Elena and Leela are the heart of the book, it is teeming with characters.
Teeming.
We have their friends, their family, their neighbors, their teachers who are appearing and reappearing throughout all these 4 books. So it's like, how did you create voices for everybody and keep everybody straight
Yeah.
through these 4 very long
I
books?
guess I kept really good notes. I guess. When you create a character voice based on a character's personality, as opposed to just saying, oh, I'm going to make this character talk higher than me and I'm going to make him a little craggly and I'm going to, you do these sort of overlays that change your voice. as opposed to that, these characters were all based on who they are, what their attitudes are, what their goals are, what their subtext is. So they were personality driven, not sound driven. And I try to do that all the time if I can. So certainly by book 4, I knew these characters really well. I knew their arcs. I knew their quirks. I knew their desires. So they just came to me because that's who those people were. I don't know that I changed my voice so much for them as much as just said the lines the way that person would say the lines. Does that make sense?
It does make sense because your pronunciation of Italian names and streets, it was just so flawless. But there really wasn't as much of an inflection in the characters' voices.
Yeah. Sometimes the voices can get in the way if they're too broad. And believe me, I go broad. So anybody who's listened to some of my books knows that I tend to go big. So I think I exercised a little more restraint on these, which felt good. I like it.
These books are very long, they're digressive. And the pacing, I thought your pacing in them was so distinct, almost languid, which makes perfect sense.
Yeah, they feel languid. They are. And they cover so much time. And it's very Italian, isn't it? It just, they really give you that sense of being in the piazza and the intrusiveness of that, of living across from all these people and around all these people all the time.
Well, I re-listened in getting ready for this interview. Honestly, I was just going to listen to a bit because I'd listened to them before, and I went through the first 2 immediately. I just did nothing else but listen to those books.
They're long.
They are, but it was wonderful. But right after, I listened to your narration of Lisa Gardner's Frankie Elkin series.
Yeah.
And it was like listening to another person. That pacing, first of all, was so dramatically different. And it really made me think that pacing is almost as important or just as important as characterization. Do you need to settle into a book to get the right rhythms in order to create the tension necessary for crime fiction?
Oh, 100%. And again, that can't be learned from, a description of the book. I need to drink that in during my prep read. I need to understand that pacing and who the red herring is and how I can shine a light on the red herring and not shine a light on the real bad guy. So pacing is everything. It really is. And every book is different. You can't there's no one size fits all, is there?
No, definitely not. Do you try to connect with the author if she or he are living, like Lisa Gardner, for example, or Tess Gerritsen, people who you've narrated quite a bit?
Yeah, I do. Some producers welcome that, and well, I don't know if it's a producer so much. Some of the agents don't want us contacting the author. I don't really know why, but I try to, not on every single book, and I don't know what my criteria is for that. I guess if it feels like I need their insight. You know what Elena Ferrante would say? She would say, no, you don't need me. My book is totally complete. And there's nothing that I, as the author, can impart that is not contained in those pages. And I think that's kind of amazing, but I still don't mind a little help. I think that selfishly, I like the author to know how much I care and understand what my process is, which is to get out of the way as much as I can. I like to say that if a friend of mine were listening to one of my books, after 1 or 2 chapters, that they would forget that it was Hillary talking to them. So I just want to get out of the way. So if I have pronunciation questions, for sure. And sometimes I just like to talk philosophically about the book, but it's not an every single time event. But I do like to become friends. Lisa and I have forged a pretty good relationship, so that's nice.
You've said crime fiction is your favorite genre to narrate. Why is that?
I don't know, because I don't like to read it for pleasure, and I don't really like to watch scary shows. I get really scared. But I don't know if it's because when I'm narrating those books, I'm in control, and I know when the jump scare is coming. Maybe it's that, but I don't know. I have an ability to get to a dark place. And I don't have a lot of pain in my life, but for some reason, trauma and terror and pain are an easy place for me to go to perform. Frivolity, I can do frivolity too, actually. I like that also. But yeah, I've done a lot of memoirs by women who have really had traumatic experiences. And like somehow I connect with that and I like it.
Well, tell us a little bit about Frankie Elkin.
I love Frankie Elkin. She's the greatest character. She's so damaged. That's why I like her. She's a recovered alcoholic, recovering, I guess, alcoholic. She's had some pain in her past. And as when we first meet her, she is tetherless. She has no home. She has a backpack with her belongings. And she travels around the world helping to find missing people. She'll read about them in the paper, and it's usually a member from an underprivileged part of our society, somebody who the cops aren't giving resources to locating. And so she'll infiltrate the community and help to find this missing person. It's just something within her that makes her do that for no money, no glory, no fame, no nothing, just because it's the right thing to do. So it seems to me that she's trying to heal something within herself. And I hope she doesn't heal it, because then maybe she'd stop and I wouldn't get to narrate her anymore.
Now, I'm nervous. Have I bitten off more than I can chew? It's hard to know. I'm always out of my league, always someplace new where I don't know where I'm going or what I'm doing. All these years later, I'm comfortable with being uncomfortable. I don't want to interfere with Martin's final effort to bring home his son, however. Nemeth may be a hard ass, but he's also correct. If I'm going to join this search, I need to pull my own weight.
She's so unlikely as a character and totally believable at the same time, if you know what I mean.
She really is. She's fearless. I love her.
Yeah. In One Step Too Far, which is book 2 of Gardner's Frankie Elkin series, there's a group of 8 people who are searching for a body, including a cadaver dog.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, there are only 2 women in the book, Frankie and Luciana, who is the dog's handler. It's very male heavy, and I wonder what the challenges of that is for you as a narrator.
Well, I probably do male voices better than I do female voices. Because listen to me, right? Again, if I'm playing the character's personality, there was the dad who was worried and panicked and, just had a mission. He was very goal-driven. And then there was the guide who was in control of everything and led the whole expedition. And right there, they already sound a little bit different, but I haven't done anything radical with my voice, right?
Last time I had a conversation this stupid was with an arrogant ass by the name of Bobby Montfort. Moved here from back east, swearing he'd grown up in the mountains and there was nothing he couldn't handle. We tried to warn him these woods were different, but he set off on a 7-day hike anyway. Know what happened to Bobby Montfort? He lived a long and happy life, I try. We removed him from the woods in pieces.
So I'm playing their intention, and hopefully it's enough.
Audio is such an intimate form of acting. You're literally in people's ears. Do you keep that in mind when you narrate? And I guess what I'm asking is, how do you decide how big to go with a character?
I think that every book will tell you how far you need to go with that. You're doing a crazy shapeshifter fantasy series. I think you've got a little more leeway in how big you go.
I
But
agree.
if it's a realistic story, you don't want to take the listener out. At the end of the day, we're not trying to trick anyone into thinking we are a full cast. It's one person telling this story. It's the oldest art form in the world, isn't it? So as long as we can keep the listener engaged and understanding who's speaking, then I think we're doing a good job. But every book will tell you what you need to do.
There are more and more multicast productions, certainly ones that you've been involved with, like The Business Trip or Witchcraft for Wayward Girls,
Yeah,
or
those
one
two
of us
have
is.
been very popular. It's great.
Yeah. With these projects or with others like them, I assume you're recording your own bit by yourself in the studio?
Yeah, we are. For those, we are. I guess for some, they call it duet, right? Where you do only your lines. But these, no, we each did just our POV sections.
Are you ever in touch in multicasts with
Yeah,
the other narrators to discuss?
definitely.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about that.
Definitely. Well, primarily to make sure that we're on the same page with our character voice choices. Not that we're going to sound like one another, but if an accent is mentioned, how far are you going with an accent? If an accent isn't mentioned, are you giving them one? Which we don't usually do, but we just want to make sure we're on the same page. So we'll usually send each other snippets of how our character sounds so they can just have that in their ear. But that's about it, I think.
I wonder, since you're recording in a booth by yourself, perhaps working with the director, but you're doing it on your own and often without feedback. That has to be challenging. Do you just want to hear from somebody somewhere out there?
Yes. It's the sound of one hand clapping, Joe. Yeah, it's a bit of a performance suck, but we've gotten used to it. It's such a delight when we have a director. I know a lot of narrators will narrate live on Discord or other platforms that people can tune in and listen to them. Because it gives them accountability. They'll say, I'm narrating from this time to that time, tune in and listen. But also because they know they're reading for somebody else. And there's something that just makes you step up your game a little bit, I think, when there are other ears on it. When I have a director, I make fewer mistakes. I know that. But I want to think that at this point, I've learned how to imagine my audience. Usually my author is my audience. The author is the audience for me. And so that's terrifying.
You narrate nonfiction, as we mentioned as well. Do you prepare differently for nonfiction than fiction?
Well, there's usually a lot more vocabulary research involved, and you're not really weaving a story. So for nonfiction, I will research the author. I'll research the author of fiction books as well. But for nonfiction, I'll definitely delve in a little deeper to see if this is their one area of expertise or whether it's one of many. I don't necessarily want to hear what they sound like. I'm not trying to imitate them, but I don't mind hearing the cadence of their voice a little bit. Something about I don't mind listening to them and taking some cues from that. You want to get the tone of their voice and their attitude. Some of them are a little snarky, some of them are not. Is it serious? Is it informative? I mean, there's a million things you look for. But the main thing is making sure you're saying all the words right.
You've done a wide range of nonfiction, but one cannot help but notice a number of books about serial killers.
I know. I'm like the serial killer queen now. It's so fun. And mass murders. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, most recently, The Scientist and the Serial Killer by Lise Olson, which was riveting and horrific.
Horrific. Who knew? I mean, it's about all of these murdered young men who were never identified. And the cops never even tried to find them. It was just horrific. That was a horrific. Did you listen to that? Oh.
Yeah, I listened to as much as I could.
Oh, yeah.
It was
yeah.
hard.
It was hard.
Which is exactly where I was going, because I was about to say it was really, really hard for me to listen. How is it for you to narrate it?
I think I go to some different place. I have to. You can't wear that. I had a director on that, which I'm really grateful for. It would have taken me twice as long without one. So we'd have to stop and just go, oh, can you even believe this? So it was nice to have somebody to bounce my emotions off of.
Oh, yeah, because that would have been so creepy to be in the booth completely alone.
Yeah, and just have to wear that by yourself and not be able to just sigh over it.
In one of her early forays, Derek spotted a series of corrugated brown shipping boxes on a shelf just below her eye level. They were labeled with the year 1973. I immediately gravitated toward those 3 boxes, she recalls. When she peeked inside, she knew right away that these were boxes of young male bones.
One had what looked like a complete set of skeletal remains. Her discovery felt personal and intensely disturbing. Each of them said Houston mass murders, and I immediately clicked back to when I was in high school. She recognized this real-life Texas horror story. These were the victims of Dean Corll, the so-called Candyman, who'd gained the title of the nation's most prolific modern killer in August 1973. I guess I had to put up a little bit of armor. You can't bleed all over the words.
Are there any things that are difficult for you to narrate, either because of the quality of the writing or because of the content?
Well, bad writing is a bummer to narrate. We can make an okay book better by our performance. We can ruin a good book by our performance, but we can't make a really crappy book excellent. We can maybe lift it up a little bit, but, show me a book without a typo and I'll show you a unicorn. Things get by, even the best editors out there, and that's fine. But I've had a couple books that I'm pretty sure were AI written, and a couple books that I don't think anybody else had eyes on. They're so full of errors. And then you wonder, am I just going to read this as is, even though it makes no sense? Or am I going to try to fix it and do an editor's job? And that's not my job to do that. And it requires a lot more work. So it's a struggle that we have talked about, we narrators talk about. Where does our responsibility end? There are a lot of different opinions on that. Some say, not my job. I'm reading exactly what's on that page. I don't care if that word is printed 3 times in a row because it's a typo. I'm reading it like that. And other people are more forgiving and say, I'll fix it. So I think that's the biggest challenge is just crappy writing. But even when I'm given a book that I don't think is well written, somebody wrote that and they poured their, I hope it wasn't AI. If it's AI, I don't care. But somebody wrote that and they poured their heart and soul and hours into it, and somebody's going to listen to it. So it's my job to honor it, whether it's good or bad. And that's all opinion too, right? What I think is good or bad.
Oh, I agree. When I was teaching, I would really try to avoid that kind of absolute judgment and would ask students, does the book speak to you or does it not?
Yeah, because a lot of the books I narrate are not books I'd pick up, but that doesn't mean that I am not going to give them my everything.
Does your career as a narrator affect the way you read for pleasure?
Yes. Just like my commercial career affected how I watched television. I couldn't watch anything with going, I auditioned for that. Oh, why didn't I audition for that? Right?
Yeah.
Well, I don't have a lot of time to actually read for pleasure. I listen for pleasure. But when I do have those moments where I can actually have a book in my hands, I find myself doing the voices. I'm like, what are you doing? You don't need to do that now. Just read it. You don't need to dissect it that way.
But you do listen to audiobooks.
Avidly.
What books do you gravitate towards?
Gosh, I do listen to some thrillers for sure. I was just going to try and look at my library to see what's on there. I love historical fiction. I love that. I like relational books, like the Neapolitan Quartet. I like stories about a lifetime and a relationship and redemption, things like that. Did you listen to We Solve Murders?
Yes, by Richard Osman and narrated by Nicola Walker.
Ah,
That is so much fun.
Oh, it was so much fun. I didn't want that to end. And I love Nicola Walker. I've seen her in so many shows. I loved that. I loved all the colors of the dark. It was darker than dark, but I thought that was incredible. So I'm just looking through my library and I have so many different things in here. I loved Remarkably Bright Creatures. That book is probably like my perfect sort of book. It's cute, it's sweet, it's loving, it's creative, and it wasn't too dangerous. So I loved that.
I'm curious about some of the significant changes that you've seen in audiobook production in the world of audiobooks generally.
One of the biggest changes in the audiobook world that I think is spectacular is that we now have a connection to our listeners via social media. So I am constantly contacted by people saying, I love this book. I love what you did. You helped me through this time. And that is so fulfilling prior to that social media connection, every now and then somebody would seek you out and send you an email, which was great. But we get a lot of feedback now. Not always good, but a lot of feedback, and getting to see how our work touches other human beings is really, I think, why we do this. We're so lucky to get to do this, to get to tell stories to people and help them, entertain them, educate them, and touch them. And that is really the biggest change that I like.
What have you learned over these years as an audiobook narrator about the art of narration?
I think what I've learned over the years is how to get out of my own way, to trust that I know what I'm doing and I've got this. And every time I get into the booth with a new book, there's still a little frisson of fear. Am I going to get this? Am I going to do it right? Am I going to do it justice? But I've learned how to settle into my saddle and roll with what the book presents to me, and try not to second guess myself, to trust that I know what I'm doing and I've got this.
And then, Hilary, finally, what does it mean for you to be named a Golden Voice by AudioFile magazine?
It's an astounding honor. I look at those faces on that page and I just, I don't know, I just can't believe that I'll be joining them. They're all icons, and I've listened to probably almost every one of them. So it's very humbling and a huge honor. It really is. I'm really touched, which doesn't feel like a strong enough word, but.
And it's also very well deserved. So many, many congratulations,
Thank you.
truly.
Thank you, Joe.
That was 2025 Golden Voice, Hilary Huber. You can check out reviews for hundreds of books narrated by Hilary at audiofilemagazine.com. Next Friday, we'll drop my interview with 2025 Golden Voice, Kimberly Farr. Follow Behind the Mic wherever you get your podcasts, and this interview will just appear in your feed. This has been a bonus edition of Behind the Mic. Behind the Mic is produced by Jessica Lockhart, Robin Whitten, Michelle Cobb, Stephen Cummings, Leslie Fine, Alan Minskoff, Alex Ritchie, Laura Rossi, and Kendra Winchester are our contributors. Jennifer Dow and Coco McCracken are our editors. And the music is William Ross Chernoff's Nomads 4-Way. I'm Jo Reed. Good listening.